So welcome everyone to our May 26th Information and Networking event. These are almost monthly events that Chilliwack Healthier Community has been hosting since 2014. And our theme or the host of this event is our Healthier Seniors Task Team. So while it is a Healthier Seniors Task Team hosted event, the concepts of emergency preparedness, of course, apply to all of us. So it's a broader topic today, which is why we've brought so many people together. My name is Sabine Mendez. I'm the director for Chilliwack Healthier Community, which is an initiative of the city of Chilliwack. Welcome to all of you here. I'd like to say that Chilliwack Healthier Community does its work on the lands of the Coast Salish people and the Stalo First Nation, and particularly the Chilliwack and Palaalt tribes. Myself, I'm grateful to live, work, and play on the unceded lands of these peoples, and I'm enjoying learning more and more about our Indigenous neighbors and cultures. We're going to launch right into the first section of our event. And Annette, if you don't mind popping up that program now into the chat box, just in case all of you don't have that in front of you and would like to see the lineup that we're trying to attempt here today. It is going to be a TED Talk style. I'll remind all the presenters to keep it as brief as possible so we can get through quickly when we get started with our presentations, and we will make sure that all the contact information is in both the chat box and our website afterwards, so that if anyone has any follow-up questions, they can do so. But right now what we have is agency updates, and it's an opportunity for any of you representing your agencies, if you have upcoming anything at all, and it doesn't have to be emergency preparedness related, if you'd like to share in person what's coming up for you that you'd like people to know, this is your opportunity. You can just put your physical hand up or your digital hand up or just start speaking. We'd love to know who you are and who you represent and what you have planned. Please feel free. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, Charlie Lance from Chilliwack Senior Peer Councillors. We've already done a roundtable on this subject. We did it at the beginning of the month, because we thought it's an important issue. And along with that, we did the fire prevention. So that's where we're at. Okay. Nothing else planned in this regard.
Awesome, awesome. Does anybody have anything else they would like to just share in general with respect to our service provider community and plans coming up in Chilliwack? Go ahead, Leslie. Go ahead, Leslie.
Thank you. Thanks, Sabine. I'm Leslie.
Thank you. Thanks, Sabine.
I'm Leslie. Oh.
I think it's Kelly's. You might want to mute yourself, Kelly.
Okay, I'll see if I echo now. No, I'm good.
Go ahead. Go ahead. Yep.
The sound was coming out after I was talking. So I'm Leslie Picton at Stalo Service Agency. I'm the social worker and service navigator there. I've been there since 2013. And for those of you that don't know me, I always let you know I'm not related to Robert Picton. I do have a different spelling. And I sometimes go by Leslie Jane. I'm a powwow dancer and from the prairies, Ukrainian, Russian, and Métis Cree. So I sometimes go by Leslie Jane when I'm in powwow season. So yeah, I just wanted to let you know at Stalo Service Agency, we've got a huge change. Our beloved director, health director, Kaloa Adel, is retiring. And yeah, so June is her last day is in June. And so we're undergoing some changes, and there's of our director, and so just hang in there. We have Laura Lee Campbell and Sue Ann Griffin as co-directors at this time, and they're there may be some changes. We're just not quite sure how things will play out. But we're so sad and happy to see Kaloa go on her retirement, and that she, will be going back home to Ontario and have a new chapter in her life. So I just wanted to make people aware of that. Things will be shifting and changing a bit over at Stalo. So thank you so much.
I really appreciate that, Leslie. Thank you so much for sharing that. Kaloa has been a part of this work in Chilliwack for so long, such a collaborative partner. She will be hugely missed, and we do look forward to connecting up once again with Stalo when the dust has kind of settled, and continue our good work together. Thank you so much, Leslie. Anybody else want to share anything?
Hi, Sabine. I'm Tivrani from the BC Association of Community Response Networks. I'm sorry, my camera is either lose audio or get camera. I just wanted to say just an acknowledgement of my CRN partners for the other regions of the Fraser Valley East, Charlene Harrison-Hines, who is the coordinator for our Hope in Boston Bar area. And Fiona Dalcott is also here from our CRN for Agassiz Harrison. I think from the BC CRN perspective as well, it's just raised awareness that our region specifically has had some unique and specific challenges around this. And obviously the impact on our older adults and our vulnerable elders has been significantly noted. So I think this collaboration and consultative way that we've started to approach it in the Fraser Valley East is making a huge shift in thinking around how we move forward on this together. For the Healthy Seniors Task Team, of which CRN for Chilliwack, Ron Angel, myself attend that as well. Charlene's work that's coming out of the Hope in Boston Bar area is looking at some of the projects they're doing, is the person that I've mentioned that will share with us as well anything that we can help support the work going forward for Chilliwack or anyone else in the region as well. So I just wanted to raise that awareness. And I have mentioned before that we have June 15th, World Elder Abuse Awareness Day coming up, but also how we look at measures like this around prevention and around supporting an age-friendly and safe community for our older adults. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Tivrani. Anybody else? Last chance. Seeing no hands, we'll move into the highly popular networking exercise, where we toss you all into breakout rooms for 5 minutes or so with 1 or 2 other people, and we ask you to just get to know each other, find out who you are, who you work for, or anything, any way the conversation goes. It's our intentional networking piece. So we'll just do that for a few minutes, and afterwards when we come back, maybe a few of you pairings or groups can share what you've learned about each other, and that is how we work together to get to know each other better. Fairground, right? Thrown from one room to another. Anybody dizzy from being tossed here and there?
All good, Sabine.
Good. And everyone hopefully had a couple of nice conversations, maybe met some new people. Does anyone want to share about somebody new that they met and some new stuff that they learned about service provision in our community? Please feel free to just pipe up or stick up your hand. Love to hear from you.
Well, Allison Gutrath and I had a very good conversation, actually. We had a great deal of fun getting to know one another, and also for me to learn something about her high neighbor program that the United Way has. So we just sort of shared stuff back and forth, and had a good time, I'd say.
That's awesome. Thank you.
I met Lisa from the fire department, because I don't remember her last name. Sorry, Lisa. But we chatted. We share a lot of common ground, and I'm going to be picking her brain after this is over because of one of the things which I am self-tasked with trying to figure out, and I'll share it with everybody for 5 seconds. The number one thing that our seniors need is a simple, effective familiar way to get information, whether it's a heat thing or a cold thing or fires or whatever. They have to have one phone number to call where it's not going to be, sorry, there are 4,682 people ahead of you. Stay on the line. So she's going to share what has been done in Chilliwack.
Awesome.
And that's just wonderful.
Awesome. Awesome. Great that you made that connection.
That's it.
Thank you. Anybody else? Everybody's shy today or hyped to hear about emergency preparedness in Chilliwack. We can dive in a few minutes early. I don't think that will be a problem. We do have lots and lots of information and discussion to share. So seeing no waving hands, we'll dive right in to our program, starting with MLA Kelly Patton. Thank you so much for joining us and opening our presentation section with whatever it is the province would like to share around emergency preparedness.
Hey, thanks so much, Sabine. I'm very, very glad to be here with you all. So thank you for inviting me. I am the MLA for Chilliwack Kent. So there are two MLAs, one for Chilliwack, one for Chilliwack Kent, but we work very closely together because everyone's very intertwined. All of the organizations here, service both of those areas. And I understand that we have Hope here as well, which is great. So I'll make sure that when I post the resources that I talk about, that I include contact information for the MLA for Hope as well, just in case that's ever needed. So basically, I mean, I don't have to tell you all what the last year has been like, what the last 2 years have been like. It's been incredibly challenging. It's been incredibly traumatic for so many of our residents. We've had loss, and we've had anxiety, and we've had, when I talk about loss, I'm talking about lives, but also property, which is, also very traumatic. And all of it came in such a way, one after the other, where, coping and grief are a real part of this. And I know for people that I'm talking to on a daily basis, the anxiety of what comes in this next season with freshet and fire season, the anxiety is very real, and I'm always happy to hear from people if they want to talk about specifics, if they want to talk about their specific situation or their anxieties in general. What I can offer as MLA is what the province is doing to support emergency preparedness as well as emergency response. So we have heard, from the floods and like that property that was washed down the river. I think the comment was, no amount of preparedness could have kept that house on that land. That in itself makes us feel very vulnerable. And I just want to take a minute just to acknowledge that feeling of vulnerability and the feeling of grief that we have because of what we've been working through and dealing with this whole time. And so that's a real thing. And sometimes for some people that I'm talking with, preparing even emergency preparedness is quite triggering. So it's important to take a minute and just reflect where you are when you're taking this work on, and make sure that you have resources. And if you need resources, please reach out as we move through into this next season, this new season where we're uncertain about what this looks like. So I'm gonna go over a few things that the province has done, and then some tools and resources that are available from the province. And I heard in a very real way what was just said by Charlene about, where can we call where there's not 4,000 people ahead of us in line? We need to know. And during the floods, the city of Chilliwack, Fraser Valley Regional District, they were putting out a lot of information. I was putting out a lot of information. A lot of it was on social media just because of the speed that it was coming out as we were reacting. And so not everybody's on social media. And it's important to know that there's a lag in news because of the nature, you know, the information has to be out there and then it has to be prepared and then delivered. And so I understand the very real struggle, especially if you're not online or that's not where you traditionally get your information. And so one of the things that I've been focusing on specifically here in our community is making sure that my office has that up-to-date information as well, because that is a phone number. Now, what we experienced during the floods was that sometimes a voicemail was left and we had to call them back. It was usually within 15 or 20 minutes. But just know that that is an option as well. But any official channels that are offered by the city or Fraser Valley Regional District or emergency response that are local are, you know, those are the priority, and we'll be making sure that people have access to that, or making sure people are aware of that as much as we can to support the local efforts, because it's those people on the ground who are really going to be able to understand the situation. During the floods and landslides, there was a lot of information coming in. Since we've been working hard on recovery, the province has partnering with Chilliwack and Fraser Valley Regional District, because those are, you know, the municipalities on the ground who are handling this. So we've done things like grants. There was recently an additional $3.3 million to enable local government to take care of some initial flood recovery costs that weren't covered by other assistance programs. I'm sorry, I don't have the numbers for Hope in front of me. And it'll support our community to develop infrastructure and planning, pump stations in Kent, raising of a road in Kent as well. And it's in addition to the $2.1 billion that was budgeted by the province to help people recover from the floods. We also, for fire, because we're very alive to the realities of fire seasons, is we now have year-round work being done. So whereas before it was seasonal, now we have people on board year-round, which is a very big step, and I think an important one. I'd really like to focus on the resources that we have, though. We have a website, and I'm going to share it in just a minute. I just can't speak and flip at the same time. Not a task I've developed, or not a skill I've developed yet, but it's called Prepared BC. And it's a website, and it offers current planning and preparedness resources for everyone. So organizations can use it, individuals can download it. It's not senior specific. However, for seniors who may have, you know, diverse abilities or mobility issues, there's also a resource specifically for persons with disabilities. And it will help you develop things like an emergency plan and how to make an emergency kit for your specific household family situation, and a guide for people who live in apartments or condos. And it also has everything there available electronically. Now, that being said, I understand not everybody is online, and I know I like physical copies of things, especially things that are this important. And so you can order hard copies by emailing Prepared BC. I'll put all of that in the chat function, or even by contacting my office. We're happy to help you get your hands on those. So for organizations who may need several copies, you can either order them or contact my office. We keep some on hand as well. And for individuals, same thing. You can order it directly or contact my office. But Sabine, I think I have like a couple minutes left. I just want to show people the webpage. Just bear with me, please, because I really can't flip and share screen while I'm speaking.
Neither can I.
All right, can everybody see my screen? Yeah, okay, so this is just preparedbc.ca. So the address box is longer, but if you put in preparedbc.ca or if you Google Prepared BC, this will come up, and I'll put, like I said, put the link in the chat box after. But as you can see, it has a lot of different categories, and I just wanted to show it to you all so that you can see it. It is quite user-friendly, it is quite intuitive, which is something that I think governments generally are getting better at. And right here, the guides and resources. These are the physical copies that you can order as well, but we have multiple languages. We have multiple different guides. So we have the household emergency plan, preparedness for, I mean, it's pandemic. I feel like we kind of already got a course in that. There's flood preparedness, which I know with the Frechette is top of mind with what happened in the fall. Wildfire preparedness, earthquake and tsunami, as well as landslides. And here in Chilliwack, Kent, landslides were a major issue for many in our area, more so than flooding, not for everybody, but a lot of land moved. Then we have circumstance-specific guides. So like I mentioned, we have the resource for people with disabilities. And then we have things as well, like the small business guide. So for organizations, you may be large businesses, but as well. But so even for organizations and societies who are trying to prepare as well, this is great to have in your different locations for your staff. And a neighborhood guide. And I really love the neighborhood guide as well, because it helps you start a conversation with your neighbors. I know that I'm hearing from neighborhoods about the situation going on in different areas of Chilliwack, Kent, and it's been very, very instructive for me. And then finally, we have a preparedness guide for our pets, because these are family members for a lot of people, and they're one of the things that can sometimes be forgotten. So I'm going to stop my share. I'm going to put all of this in the chat, all these resources and my contact information as well. And I'm going to be around, so I don't know if there's questions later. But the final thing that I just wanted to say is my office hosts a not-for-profit roundtable, and we invite people. We do it quarterly. I'm not very strict on specific not-for-profit status. Sometimes it's charity, sometimes it's a group that may be seeking not-for-profit status. Either way, we talk about a lot of things, do a lot of networking and conversation, so we all know what we're doing. If you're interested in participating, we have one coming up. Please feel free to email my office. Even if your business is not in Chilliwack, Kent, if you serve people who are in Chilliwack, Kent, that's great. And the more voices we have at the table, the more I can bring back to government as well, including the Parliamentary Secretary for Nonprofits. Our next meeting is actually talking about funding models, which is really exciting because I was honored to host the very first not-for-profit roundtable in the province, and the Parliamentary Secretary was there, and we specifically gave her feedback about funding and the issues that funding causes in our ability to be responsive, even for things like this, for supporting people through emergencies. And she's actually coming back to tell us about the changes that are being made based on the feedback that she's heard. So it's a powerful table. There are a lot of really fantastic voices. And if you think that your organization would like to add your voice to that conversation, I would be grateful for your time as well. So that's it in a nutshell. I don't want to take up too much time, but I'll be around. And if there's questions later, or if you have questions and want to email my office or call, please do that. But thank you for listening.
That was wonderful, Kelly. Just so helpful, so accessible, and thank you for sharing all those resources and walking us through the website. Speaking for myself, I just found that incredibly informative. I'm really grateful that you made some time to come today and tell us what you had to tell us. Thank you. We will move on to our part one of this event, which is just for those of you who are wondering why we have a part one, part two. It's just because at our Healthier Seniors table, we've been talking about emergency preparedness and vulnerable people and seniors and how to better prepare. And we note that there is a huge service provider community in Chilliwack, closely networked, working together, and many of them are supporting seniors. That's their client base. And so when emergency situations come up, there's a number of people, a certain percentage of people who are connected to service providers in Chilliwack. And so the service providers have different ways of reaching out to their clientele to let them know heat is coming, storm is coming, or are you okay, et cetera, et cetera. So those are the connected people. We wanted to hear from everyone who has a client base about what they've been thinking about and what they're planning to do with respect to emergency preparedness. And then there's another section of seniors in our community who are not connected to service providers. They're just haven't found out, aren't comfortable, or can't, whatever. And the question has been, how do we help them? How do we make sure they stay safe whenever emergencies come up? So that's our part 2. And then hopefully there'll be some time for discussion afterwards. The hope is that new connections are made here and new ways of working together come out of this event. So we'll start with part 1 with very brief little updates on what all these local service providers are planning to do, starting with Layla Rashid, Chilliwack Community Services.
Hello, everyone. Good morning, and thank you for inviting me in, and I'm so glad to be here. So just a brief introduction. My name is Layla, and I work for Chilliwack Community Services, a nonprofit organization here in Chilliwack. And as far as senior concerned, we have 3 programs that run: is the Better at Home program, the Meals on Wheels program, and the newest program is the social prescribing, which is a program I coordinate. So during emergency, what we did last year was for the Better at Home program clients, which are about a little over 100, we were able to call some of them and check on them and see how they're doing or if they needed anything. And the same goes for the social prescribing client as well. I didn't have as many, so I did call each and every one of them and ask them if they were okay. And that's how we checked on them. The Meals on Wheels client, they have volunteers that deliver meals to them weekly or sometimes twice a week. And these people are physically checked on by the volunteers that drops the food. But beyond that, we did not have access to anybody who's not somehow attached to some program. So those people that were not attached, we were concerned about that, whether they needed help or if anybody else is checking on them. So we had lots of discussion in our agency regarding how to do better for next year and how to prepare better, how to educate, maybe print some flyers or have an ad in the newspaper. That's something my agency is willing to do because of, again, accessing information for senior that is not on social media. So making sure that there's one number they can reach, which is the 211, is the biggest thing that we would love to talk about today. Ensuring that clients or seniors know about that service and funding that service so they can be able to accommodate more seniors or more calls. So in a nutshell, that's about my agency and emergency preparedness. Thank you.
That was perfect, Layla. And I love that we're highlighting 211. That might just be that number, Charlene, that we're thinking about. I don't know what the wait times are, but definitely that is a well-funded, thorough telephone number and website that I think can be part of this conversation as we move forward. Next up, I don't know if Ann Jones has made it. I know are you here, Ann, on the next screen at all?
I am here, Sabine.
Oh, yes. Awesome. There you are. Carry on. Handing it over to you.
Thank you. I apologize for being late joining. I just had another meeting there. My team is a Chilliwack Community and Primary Care team. Also, in my portfolio, we have the Older Adult Day program and the Palliative Consult team for Chilliwack, Hope and Agassiz. Most of our clients all of our clients actually receive home support services through Fraser Cham Home Support, which is also home health and home support have completed our redesign here about 4 years ago. So we're now one large team, and we provide community health workers to provide assistance with personal care to our clients in the community. And we also have our community health nurses who provide case management, nursing care to clients with those needs in the community. So for emergency preparedness, we do have a regional team also who can assist us with those calls because we do have close to 2,000 clients. So we have we call it an EP designation. So it's an emergency preparedness designation. And those clients that at the highest priority have the an EP designation, and they're called first. So we do call all of our clients in anticipation of any kind, you know, if there's a heat dome forecasted or extreme weather of any kind, we do call our highest priority clients. Because that is a lot of people to call, the regional team do help us with that also. So we just do wellness checks. Also, we do have an LPN and an RN who are responsible for a caseload of about 70 clients, and they know the high priorities on their caseload, and they will also call and or visit as needed in the event of an emergency. Is that sufficient information for you, Sabine? Does anyone have any questions?
That sounds excellent. Thank you for that.
I have a question.
Yeah. Hi, Patty.
Hi. So all of the calling, that's wonderful. So if somebody's in trouble, and it's, you know, you're in danger of heat stroke, for example, do you have somebody on your team, for your EP team, that can actually get out, or do you just call the ambulance? Or if it's kind of the in-between part, like what happens in those situations?
So if we identify someone who is in trouble, then if it's the regional team that made the call, they'll alert the local team so that we can dispatch someone out there. We do have an urgent response team also, because we do all, you know, our nurses get pretty booked up with visits for their clients on their caseload. So we do have also an emergency team. Sending to emerge, calling an ambulance is always a last resort. We would send a registered nurse out to assess the client, and if it can be managed in the community, we do that. So we do have someone that we can send out right away. Yes.
Awesome. Fabulous. Just before we move on to our next presentation, Emily Kelly Patton has asked if we could get a screenshot of this spectacular event. If you're uncomfortable with that, maybe you can go ahead and turn off your camera for a minute or two. But if everyone's okay, Annette, can you take a couple of screenshots for our records, and then maybe we can share with those who want it?
Yeah, unless, did Kelly want to do it herself, or she just wants one provided?
So Kelly doesn't know how to take a screenshot.
No, I don't either. I'm like,
I always get our assistant to do that. Okay, I'm gonna give it a shot, Kelly.
Thank you so much.
I'll give you a minute, and then Sabine, I'll tell everybody
fix
when
your
to
hair.
smile. Let's go on to the next presentation, and then I'll cue you when, right after the next one, okay?
Okay.
All right.
Perfect. All right. Next presentation, Kelly, Chilliwack and District Seniors Resources Society.
Good morning again, everybody. I think the one thing that we've learned in the past year is that we want to move out of reaction mode and into preparation mode. So last year, we did a lot of social media, making sure that on our Facebook, people knew what to do, sharing of information, sharing tools and resources, sharing the information from the city, from the province, from Fraser Health. We have over 1,500 members that we can reach out to via email in our chimp mail. So we do mail outs to them as well as doing educations of how to prepare for emergencies with them. We also have a lot of people that we know can access the internet. So we have a phone tree of volunteers to make sure that we're doing wellness checks, check-ins, information calls, working with a lot of private agencies to make sure that we have supplies that we can get out. In the heat dome, we had fans, we had portable air conditioners, we were supplying water bottles, supplying food, just making sure that there was accessibility, providing rides if they were needed to come to the cooling stations, just making sure that we were connecting with other service providers to see what they were doing, if they needed support. So really our goal this year is to be prepared, to have the information sheets ready to go, to hand them out via flyer, to post them around at the library, at places that seniors go, on our own boards to make those phone calls and to share that information via social media, and to make sure that we're still working with, we had some amazing private funders that wanted to make sure that they were supplying things that were needed through the heat dome, through the cold snap, and through the flooding.
That's fantastic. Thank you, Kelly. The Chilliwack District's Resources Society, I just had a question, just a reminder of who Kelly represents, kind of the big information seniors hub for all things regarding seniors these days, the Chilliwack District Seniors Resource Society. Thank you so much for that, Kelly.
Just wanted to quickly add that we're able to do all this due to the amount of volunteers that we have. And if any of you out there know of anybody that wants to help volunteer, even so small, we just want to make sure that we're not missing anybody, because there's a lot of people to contact. So if anybody knows of any volunteers, we're certainly.
That's great. A great reminder. Thank you so much, Kelly. Charlene, you have your hand up? Or are you clapping? Did you want to say something, Charlene?
Not me.
Charlene, sorry, Charlene.
Yes. What if there's a massive power outage, for example, here or telecommunications? Shaw went dead, and it went dead for quite a while. What contingency plans exist? I mean, I'm talking about Chilliwack now. I know in hope that most people relied on social media, but when the power's out, what happens? What contingency plans are there in existence, or that you've come up with, or that work?
Was that a question for me?
It's a question for, yes, anybody can answer that one, because that was the situation here in Hope, which meant that the emergency center, which was in the municipal hall, was done. The only place that had auxiliary power generators was the secondary school here. So what happens to a senior when, for example, let's just say they're on Shaw or what have you? What happens then? A lot of people were on Shaw. What happens with them? They're basically on an island. So I was curious.
Yeah, it's a really great question. I feel like I wonder if potentially this could be touched on in our part 2, and then if it's not thoroughly answered, further discussion. I think that's kind of the direction we're moving with such an important and big question. If we can just, maybe we'll pin that and see, let's get through the presentations and information sharing piece and then see what's missing. What do you think?
Thank you. I just wanted to, I'm writing notes, but I wanted to ask before I forget.
Yep. Yep. Noted.
Thank you.
Perfect.
Sabine, we're ready for people to primp for the camera now.
Okay, I'm primed. I'm ready.
Everybody? Ready? Okay. I'm just taking a look at that screenshot. You're all beautiful.
Fabulous.
We're
Thank
ready
you so
to go.
much, Annette. Next up is the Compassionate Neighborhood Health Partner Society, huge mover and shaker in Chilliwack, connecting seniors and a lot of work around social de-isolation and connections. Connie Stam cannot be here today. She's in fact running another one of these Seniors Connect cafes and cannot attend this event, but she's given me something to share with all of you. I'll just read it out. For the May Emergency Preparedness Week and the week thereafter, the Compassionate Neighborhood Health Partner Society has slightly adapted the Prepare BC Household Preparedness Guide to gear it specifically to our seniors, and we are discussing this with our Seniors Connect Cafe attendees and providing each attendee with a copy of this booklet. We will also provide each attendee with a hot weather safety tip sheet for older adults and have available some copies of extra planning needed if living with a disability or mobility concern, and copies of preparing a plan for our pets. So it sounds like they're heavily connected to the Prepare BC website and the resources offered there. And I don't know how many clients Connie is directly connected with, but definitely someone who works with more and more seniors every week, it seems like. So a great community partner. We'll make sure that Connie and her organization's contact information is in our chat box. For maybe not in the chat box. I don't know if Annette, you're able to find that and stick that in there, but if not, it will go onto our website afterwards. So then we'll move on to Charlie, Chilliwack Seniors Peer Counselors.
Hello, everybody. I basically provided you with a snapshot of what we do as an organization. Most of our contact is one-to-one. It's either direct, person-to-person. It's over the phone. We do use some electronic means of communication when it comes to serving our clients, but what seniors really seem to want is the personal touch. So that's basically what we do. We provide support of different kinds. We have counselors who help clients who are released from prison. We have people who help clients who are dealing with the loss of a spouse, or transition to retirement, or dealing with some significant health issues. And then we deal with those we work with those who are basically socially isolated. And many seniors do fit into that category and aren't necessarily either mobile or have the ability or can afford to connect to the internet. So what's really important for us is being able to make those personal connections, and that's basically what our counselors do. We don't rely on a lot of technology. It's either face-to-face or the phone, because that's what most of the seniors that we work with are most comfortable with. We do have physical get-togethers once or twice a year, usually at Christmas and in August. So a barbecue or a Christmas dinner, but COVID's kind of thrown that into the dumpster. That's basically the kind of work that we do. We receive referrals. People self-refer, family members refer, Fraser Health refers to us. We get referrals from a number of different areas or sources. We're always looking for counselors who are interested in taking our training, and we do that. A lot of that training is done electronically now, and it's been streamlined somewhat from what it used to be. That's the kind of work that we do, and we connect with other organizations as it seems necessary to do so. So that's really what we do. 60 counselors, 120 clients, more or less. It really depends on what the wait list looks like, but that's basically the work that we do. And if you got any questions, feel free to ask.
That's awesome. Thank you so much, Charlie. And I assume that if there's a weather alert, flood alert,
yep,
any kind of emergency alert, those 60 counselors will make that phone call to the people that they're connected to, and that's how that piece works there. That's awesome. Thank you so much, Charlie. And then lastly, in our section here of part 1 is the Community Block Watch program. Michelle.
Morning, everyone. Thanks for having us here. Just a brief, my name is Michelle Wolf, and I oversee the crime prevention programs in Chilliwack. And Block Watch is the program which promotes our emergency preparedness. So in general, basically a Block Watch, what they do is specific block areas. They will designate 1 or 2 residents, a captain and a co-captain, and then you will recruit all the residents living in the specific block area. and then create a map with the proper contact information of all the residents. And then you basically focus on just reporting criminal activity and also looking after each other in your block area, hence seniors. If you have seniors in the block area, then they be able to communicate with them however means. The communication chain in Blockwatch, of course, is social media, email, telephone, or just good old-fashioned door knocking. So the Blockwatch program works in unison with the fire department, and it's kind of mandated that if you're registered with the Blockwatch program, that once a year you have a block party. And generally in most of these block parties, we will see if the fire department can give a presentation on emergency preparedness. We do have a brochure as well, which we circulate in the block area as well, which is from the BC Provincial Blockwatch Society. And I'll definitely type the link into the chat there as well with our website. So yeah, that's pretty much it in a nutshell for emergency preparedness from our side.
How widespread are these cohesive neighborhoods that are registered under Blockwatch? Like, is it half of Chilliwack? Is it a quarter? What do you think with respect to people talking to each other in neighborhoods? Does it look like right now?
Well, generally right now we have currently 75 registered block areas. So it's as long as we can continue obtaining registered block areas and the communication gets out there. And of course, that's our potential goal, right? So, but yeah, basically
everybody eventually.
Exactly, yes.
Layla?
Yes, just mindful of the time, and I know we should wait for questions. Just a quick one. What are the process of getting into these Blockwatch lists? Like, is it a complicated process, or how do you promote it? Just quickly.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Just contact our Blockwatch coordinator here at the Crime Prevention Office, and I will supply with contact information. And it's for a captain and a co-captain in a designated area. It's a very short training session, very informative. You're probably looking at about maybe 6 hours of volunteer work getting your map coordinated of the area. And it depends if your block area is very active with criminal activity, so you could be really busy. But yeah, generally it's not tedious or laborsome. So I'll definitely, like I mentioned, I'll put the contact information in the chat box for you.
And is there a standard size for number of houses in a Blockwatch area, or does that vary wildly?
Sorry, Sabine, I'm having hearing.
Sorry. Can you hear me better now?
Yeah.
Okay. So how many houses is there a standard number of houses and now it's a Blockwatch area, or does that vary wildly?
Yeah, so it definitely varies, but we like to keep it to like maybe a maximum of 25 homes in a block area, because you do get some really eager volunteers that are like, oh yeah, we'll take up the next 3 blocks, you know, when they want to take on 100, but we like to keep it to 25 at the max for a block area.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you so much for that. We are making great time. We're going to move on unless someone has a burning question to our part 2 now. Seniors who are maybe not connected to service providers. So we'll start this section with a presentation from the City of Chilliwack Emergency Preparedness People Department. Go ahead.
Good morning, everybody. Everybody can hear me okay, I'm assuming?
You're good,
Perfect.
Chief.
My name is Chris Wilson. I'm an assistant fire chief for the Chilliwack Fire Department and also responsible for disaster management for the city of Chilliwack. So I've booked all of my holidays late in the year. And hopefully that's during murder hornet and zombie apocalypse season, because, you know, those have had to slide off the table a little bit. But we are pretty busy with preparedness activities for kind of 4 events potentially, that being the spring freshet, wildfire season, possible extreme weather, heat dome type events. And then from an emergency support services side, preparing on how to best serve evacuees from other areas. The city of Chilliwack's been called upon quite often to perform regional reception center work for evacuees. So full plate, but really excited for the opportunity to speak here. I'm going to kind of open up and just speak a little bit on some general themes that we'd like to become more connected with and have seniors understand or get a better understanding of. And then Lieutenant Lisa Axelson is going to fill in some more of the meat and potatoes later on with specific preparedness tips that we'd love for seniors to share. However, I think if it's okay, I'll maybe take a shot in the dark, no pun intended, on Charlene's question about generators and backup power and what happens, if that's okay right now. Not hearing any objections. So what I would suggest, Charlene, certainly things like backup power and everything is certainly important to people staying connected and responding to an incident in general. Where I would probably suggest is the provincial government through Emergency Management BC has a really good critical infrastructure assessment tool online, where any agency can kind of perform an assessment on what things are important dependencies to your organization and what things are critically important. And by kind of running through that matrix, you can further discover where some vulnerabilities might be and then engage with those service providers or, you know, companies like BC Hydro or Rogers or whatever to see what their level of preparedness is and how you might be able to become best prepared in your area. So that's where I would recommend to start, to kind of give a bit of a holistic idea of what you're facing. We've done this in Chilliwack, and in the floods, we lost our city hall phones for a little over a day due to a third party, communications company. And it was tough and challenging, but the trick of the day is the lower the tech, typically the more resilient that thing is, right? So right down to amateur radio, we have a brilliant, I hate calling them amateur radio because they're far from it. We have a brilliant amateur radio club in Chilliwack, and many municipalities have clubs of their own that they have pretty much the most basic technology in the world that is really the most robust, and we would certainly leverage them during the time. So just quickly, I would explore that CI assessment tool through EMBC and start there. I think it would be a great introduction to the planning side of it as what you're dependent on. So yeah, the fire department's not an entity that's really connected with seniors and service providers to the extent we should be. But I do see a huge opportunity with the group here to further some connections. And I think there's a significant need for us to really leverage your connectivity and your relationships with your clients, not only from an emergency preparedness perspective, public education perspective, but also in response as well. And so I look forward to future discussions and really want to tie into the horsepower present here and those connections and relationships. But some of the big things we find people, and especially seniors, would like to understand from our perspective is, you know, what happens in an incident, kind of paint the picture of from the first 911 call, how is an incident assessed and where do I go and what do I do? And one of the bigger points to that is how do I get information on it? After the flood events in November, the city put out a communication survey that was completed by several hundred people. And one of the cool things about it is that 87% of people that replied to the survey wanted to become better prepared. So that was good marching orders for us to get back out there now in a little bit more COVID relaxed environment. But social media was spoken to a little bit before, quite often not a technology embraced by a lot of seniors, but it still is pretty powerful. And unfortunately, it's got a bit of a double-edged sword component to it. But even in the floods alone, our Facebook followership increased by 24%, and our Twitter followership increased by 20.5% from the flood events alone. So there's a lot of good connectivity, but we do want to make sure people understand to source out local Chilliwack media, the City of Chilliwack's website, and the official City of Chilliwack Facebook and Twitter accounts. Those are going to be the best sources for information. So I'd encourage all of you to keep on those pages as well. And for us, we also amplify messages from many other organizations and agencies that might be involved. So I think we have a real ability to work together to amplify messages and get messages out. The survey also said that the majority of people got their information from community-based social media, which is good in a way, but also a little bit tough. So we're trying to channel everybody to the official City of Chilliwack website, Twitter account, Facebook account, and local media such as the Progress local radio. On alerting that, as you may have known, the new Alert Ready system has been expanded to include wildfire and flood events. I believe it's being explored to expand notification for extreme weather events. And I do see that as a plus for the seniors community, especially because it's not really technology reliant. There's no subscriptions. You don't have to log into everything. It is a little intrusive, but it's meant to be that way. And that I would dare say most seniors are connected to radio and TV for sure. And that will be a very good avenue to alert people that we didn't have access to before. And it's an extra egg in our basket, so to speak. So I would, if you're not aware about that system yet, I would educate yourselves and share that education with your clients. I think it's a very powerful tool that is very easy to establish and set up from my end. It's only a phone call and a quick form, and I can put a message together for distribution to a kind of a fairly specified geographic area. So all about alerting. We want to make sure seniors and the vulnerable population know where to access information consistently. And then we also want to educate them a little bit about where they should go and kind of how that unfolds. Prepared BC, as MLA Padden suggested, is an awesome resource and tool for a multitude of preparedness disciplines. We reference it a lot in our public education, almost exclusively really, because we want to share the same message. But we also specifically want to share information about types of evacuations, so the population can better understand what an alert is, what an order is, how they're delivered, how the information flows in an incident, and hopefully as things recede or improve, how all of that is kind of rescinded and the beginning of recovery and returning to a new normal. Secondly, can everybody still keep up? I'm speaking fast, but I love this stuff and I apologize. So secondly, one thing that we really want seniors in particular to be mindful of is kind of that vulnerability assessment. You guys know better than we do, because we just show up kind of during a bad day and we don't get to engage with these wonderful people on too regular of a basis. But you know as well as we do that everybody has their own uniquenesses and vulnerabilities, and that's a really important key to personal preparedness. And yes, I just saw in the chat, Petra, I will certainly share the links to our official media, no problem. So having that vulnerability assessment for yourself, you know, through mobility issues, medical issues, transportation, do I have somebody that can check on me? If a client does not have any supports, does not have insurance, and they respond to an emergency support services or ESS reception center, such as Chilliwack Secondary School, the better they can paint their picture of what they have and what they need, the better our teams are able to service them and connect them with the supports that they need. So there are a few examples of vulnerability checklists out there, but one of the takeaways is I'd like to work with all of you to kind of develop a bit of a checklist that makes sense and hits all the key points that you feel that seniors should be looking at in terms of their general preparedness. Life is going to change for them during an event, and some of that stuff that they need is life sustaining. Some of it isn't. Some of it just maintains good mental health, right? Which is important in preparedness too. So one takeaway I'd like us to focus on is improving or developing a vulnerability checklist. So that's kind of from my end, the main high level things we want to focus on. I'd love to get better connected because there's huge power and opportunity there for us. We'd love to get seniors more aware of how they get alerted and what happens during a typical emergency and how they get information. And then we'd also like to develop some tools together to help them assess their own vulnerabilities so that services can be better and more meaningfully and quickly applied. I see one question from Charlene, and then I do want to be mindful to turn it over to Lisa pretty quick. She's got a big bag of stuff to share too.
Hi, what I'm stuck on is, what would you suggest to get the municipality of Hope and Boston Bar, et cetera, to do a survey or an inventory of who and where there are generators in the case of a power failure? Which would be the best way, in your opinion and your experience, to get that done? Because that was a major thing. Everybody was running around scrambling, and then the lights were on at the high school. That's the only way anybody knew they had a generator. And the recreation center here in Hope does not have a generator. So that being said, what can you suggest?
Good question. I've got two initial suggestions. One would be obviously engaging with the District of Hope and the FERD to take a look at developing a resource list. Secondly, and perhaps even more powerful and tangible, is through channels like social media. There's nothing against neighborhoods and groups developing their own resource lists. In my opinion, nothing helps people in a disaster more than other people. So you don't necessarily need to go official with it per se. Neighborhood preparedness is a huge, powerful tool, we feel. We have over 400 gated communities in the city of Chilliwack, and we try and reach out as best as we can to leverage that power. So that's what I would suggest. I would start at the grassroots level and build that, and then that's something you can take to the FERD and the District of Hope, like, hey, here's what we've done. We're wondering how you might be able to fit into this, but that's where I would suggest you start.
I love that answer. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to try and fill in take 5 minutes of your time. I'm going to elaborate on Assistant Chief Wilson's talking about the neighborhood preparedness program. As some of you may know, I have been doing presentations for emergency preparedness since I started my job almost 20 years ago, and it's evolved. We do call upon the Preparedness BC information. We send this stuff out whenever we go. We hand it all out. We talk about what you need to do before any incident happens. And that's always been the part of the prevention division, and what we've been trying to sell for the last 20 years is it takes a little bit of work to prepare, and it takes a little bit of work to get there. But when actually disaster hits, when you are prepared, there's less stress, there's less this, there's less that. And the key here is that I haven't just targeted seniors. I've targeted all people in the community. We haven't in the last few years been not doing much because of COVID, but we do concentrate heavily on the gated communities because we have kind of an area that we can concentrate on, 400 homes or 200 homes or 100 homes, which we can get a lot of bang for our buck, and we can create those awareness programs. But the big one here is, first and foremost, you cannot help your community if you are not yourself prepared. So we as a group of people here, how many of you are already prepared for disasters? How many of you have your backup generator? How many of you have your grab and go kit? How many of you got all that stuff? Okay, we're sitting here talking about how we can help seniors, but ultimately we have to help ourselves first so that we can take the education that we've learned creating our own plans and move them out and share that with everybody. So that's how I deliver presentations is, first and foremost, I as a presenter must be prepared, okay? Then I speak to you guys. Are you prepared in your own home? Now, can you take that to everybody else in your home? With that, what have we learned? What do seniors need? We know that seniors are not technology. Some are very savvy in it, and most are not. So how do we get the messaging out to them? So my personal belief with the last heat dome that we had was we dropped the ball big time. We got lots of information out there for social media and for the electronic age, but we did not hit boots on the ground. We did not get to those people that needed the direct contact, that didn't have the computerized stuff. So this particular forum is huge. What can we put together? What information via that vulnerability checklist can we get? Can they do an assessment of what they've got? Personally, can they then move forward on being more prepared via the information that they need? Do they have water? Do they have an operational fan? Do they have access to a window unit for air conditioner? If they've got it, who they got to install it for them, because they're elderly, they may not be able to do those sorts of things. So this is where I'm going with this, is educating you guys on the types of questions that you can ask. What types of things can we give to these people? Where can these resources reside so that we can easily get those? So as Assistant Chief Wilson was alluding to, that vulnerability checklist needs to come from all of us. We need to be able to feed that in. We need to have that universal phone number. We need to have that universal area that the elderly can access, that feel comfortable, that feel empowered to do so. We've got some really great organizations here that deal strictly with the seniors in our community. We need to get together. We need to have that stuff. We need to get that information out. So Kelly talked about the Preparedness BC website. Okay, we can all get that stuff free of charge. Okay, it's delivered to us free of charge. We can hand that stuff out as we go. My favorite one that I like to give out is the fill in the blank home emergency plan. Okay, it's not a neighborhood one, it's a personal one. And it's a fill in the blank document that family members can fill out with their elderly parents and grandparents. So that's the one that I'm giving out to people and saying, this is what you guys need to address first and foremost, is what have you got right now and where do you have to go to be prepared? That's all I have. Any questions?
That is powerful. That's fantastic. I know I'm not ready, and I'm going to do exactly what you said.
Well, on that note, I do retire in 2 months. Michelle was asking me, what am I doing? Do all the phone calls get to go to Chris Wilson? No, they don't. They get to go to Dennis Trill and Rosemary Scaveras, who are observing in this today. So if you have any questions around a neighborhood preparedness, what the fire department does with regards to prevention, presentations and stuff like that, get a hold of me today until Tuesday. Then I'm on vacation for a little bit, and then I'm off on retirement. But Rosemary and Dennis, fully capable, fully skilled. They work with Assistant Chief Wilson, and we will try and accommodate. I know there's a few of you on here that I've seen in my presentations. We do presentations with Michelle, as she said. They're a specialized one. They're kind of more casual, kind of, here's the brochures. We'll just do one-on-one talking. But we also do formal presentations, which we've done for the seniors peer counseling. We just did one last month. So we do those. They do take a little bit of organization, but we do offer that. So there you go. I'm done.
That's awesome. Thank you, Lisa. Just before we get to the two hands up, is it Rosemary and Dennis?
Yes.
Can you guys get your whatever contact information? If someone wanted to ask you about any of the stuff that Lisa was talking about, could you get that into the chat box? That's part of our info. Thank you very much. Go ahead, Layla.
I have a few questions regarding this whole. I agree with everything that you said, Lisa, and I feel like as a community, there is a lot of nonprofit agencies here that working very hard to connect and do good. But I feel like our biggest problem is there is no centralized, unified, mainstream place or person that organizes all of that. So for instance, during last flood or heat wave, we had lots of donations, but there was no collaboration on a bigger level that we have funding for storage or distribution. So we had lots of things that did not maybe get distributed or get a home because we did not have that kind of plan. So what I'm asking really is, who can we invite or talk to access these resources and funding for example, hiring more people to work at the 211 during emergency time, so that more people are able to access that information and not getting discouraged. Who do we access regarding getting funds for printing stuff in the progress, as far as educating seniors about actually the symptoms of heat stroke, because most of them got in trouble because they were not aware that some medication could cause them to sense heat more. These things, they think they're okay, but they're not really okay. So who do we, as a community, we're doing what we can, but who do we contact or reach out to so that we have more organized approach. Another thing that I think would be helpful, and it was done in other community, is having a registry, asking seniors to volunteer to add their name on a list if they're vulnerable, like people, Sharon's concern about electricity, people who are on wheelchairs or in hospital beds. If anything, if the power goes off, they're stuck in bed and they're unable to get out. So yeah, so if you could just elaborate on that a little bit and see.
So this is part of that education component that you do now. So that you front load it, you do all the preparation ahead of time. So that's the education component of it. You guys now know that we do this, we do the presentations, but you also know that if we can create that vulnerability checklist that would address seniors' vulnerabilities, medications, mobility issues, hearing and visually impaired, those sorts of things. And along with that vulnerability checklist, then you start addressing, okay, what medications are you on? And that maybe that's a question that they take from that vulnerability checklist. They have to talk with their doctor. Okay, what are the medications I'm on? Will it cause me to have difficulty with heat stroke? Because again, we're not professionals in what the medications are going to do. So you'd have to get the medical profession to deal with that. So in this group of people, what does that vulnerability checklist look like? It looks like Mr. Wilson here has got something to add to that. What can we do as a group of people to get that information so we're tweaking the right questions are being asked? That's the key here, and that's what I'm hoping we're going to accomplish here today, is that we're getting a group of people that have the knowledge to get that information compiled so that we can now start moving forward and prepare in the future. With regards to donations and storage, we have done that in the past. And what we discovered is it is very, very difficult to keep a storage area. So I'm really hoping that Assistant Chief Wilson will speak to that specific aspect of it, because I know that we collect cash to go out to those sorts of things, because that we can keep. It's a small little area. When it comes to furniture and supplies and stuff like that, then it becomes a whole logistical issue that's outside of the fire department actually operating the emergency. So we do rely on other entities to look after that donation side of it. And I'm hoping that Chris Wilson will speak to that. Then there was a third question that you had in there too, was there? And I've forgotten it at the moment. So.
Thanks, Lisa. And go ahead, Leila, sorry.
Yeah, it was just like, if we were to compile a list of vulnerable seniors in the community, who would be in charge of storing this information?
That's a
being
good question.
sensitive, confidentiality and all that. So who would be, we can collect them, but where is it stored and who's storing it? And, asking the senior to volunteer, like if they're gonna need help, I'm sure they will be more than happy to say, hey, check on me. I need this and this and that. So I feel like a lot of them will volunteer to register. And I've run that by many of the clients that I deal with, and they all agree that we don't know what's happening. That's number one. And yeah, I would love for somebody to check on me when things go wrong, because sometimes I wouldn't know. Some of these people don't have internet, even no Wi-Fi. So forget going online. So yeah.
Yeah, I would just maybe add that on the donations piece, sorry for the blunt humor, but everybody knows what stuff stands for, right? So someone's trash unfit for family and friends. I don't mean to put a blunt point on it, but donations management and goods management is often the second disaster. And we've learned some hard and some easy lessons with it, but we did partner with Tourism Chilliwack for the November 2021 floods, as well as the 2021 wildfires. And they did a absolutely outstanding, massive amount of work in compiling donations and providing that avenue. It's fairly tricky for a municipality to get deeply involved with managing donations. Money does talk, as Lisa said, but we are working a little bit on how we can further explore and improve partnerships with other agencies to kind of help us with that. But donations management is pretty tough. As far as funding goes for things we might want to do together, like newspaper ads, etc. I think maybe offline we could probably explore that a little bit as a group, and what kind of things might we want to accomplish, what existing room is there in agency budgets, and then figure out where we might need to go with that. I think it's certainly worth exploring. Yeah, I just wanted to add those two quick things.
Thanks. Go ahead, Kelly.
Yeah, so it's not really a question for Lisa, but it's just a comment on something you had said about, you know, finding with those checklists. Does someone have the air conditioner? Do they have someone to put it in as a senior? And what we ran into last year, and we worked really closely with home care because they would come to us and let us know who was in need, is that we had these air conditioners provided and we had people to install them, but we were pushed back from the apartment owners saying no. And they were posting signs in the apartment building saying, you cannot install these air conditioners in here. They were telling seniors when they could run their fans, when they could run their microwaves, because they don't have, those apartment buildings are old and they don't have the grid to support running these things. So then that puts these seniors in yet another vulnerable position, because we have the supplies to give to them, yet they're not allowed to use them. And they're even being told if they do use them and they're being caught, that they can be evicted. So that's a whole other thing. I wasn't trying to take up the time, but I just thought with all these amazing people sitting around the table, here's another issue that we need to be considerate of and have further conversations about.
That's very scary that they're dictating when you can and can't use an air conditioner, especially in a situation of a heat dome. I would be quite surprised that that would actually hold up in court or through the resident tenancy board. I think that there would be, but we shouldn't have to go that far, right? Because that takes money and time and all that sort of stuff. So I think that's again an education component to apartment owners, right?
Emily Patton.
Hi, thanks for sharing that, Kelly. It's very upsetting. Please feel free to call my office and I am happy to call landlords specifically and make sure that they have access to the rules and the very strict laws that are in place regarding being a landlord and the rights of a tenant. And happy to do that while air conditioners are being installed.
Fabulous. Charlene?
One last question for me. What about senior residential retirement centers, if you will, whatever you want to call them? We have one here that has 21 people. When this insanity started here with the flooding and people being caught and the power failure, I contacted one of them, and it's a nonprofit. They have no generator. And they ran it pretty well. They were okay. But then there are others. You have a number of people, some with health issues, and there is no generator. So what I'm asking is what does one do? Is there funding available? I mean, it's kind of like which came first, you know, the horse or the cart, right? My thoughts on it is if you see somebody that's hurt and they're collapsed on the street, you don't ask, do they have health insurance? Do they have a primary physician? No, you help them. So my question is how do we go about finding a solution for a potential problem for our vulnerable people? Does that make sense?
I think there's maybe a variety of answers to that, some of which are kind of coming through our presentations and discussion with respect to, is there funding out there? I'm sure there is. I'm not tuned into that. Maybe others have some ideas about that. And Emily Patton, you have your hand up.
I want to actually respond to that. So for the facilities that you're talking about, or the communities that you're talking about, you know, there's licensing and there's different oversight of those kinds of facilities, and usually, but not always, tied directly into the province in one way or the other, be it through health or you know, through various mechanisms. And so there's a responsibility to do emergency planning and identify risks, you know, with the organization through that contract and that responsibility and then to be able to clearly identify any deficiencies. Now, after the learnings from last year, organizations can apply to the province or to programs based on, because there's not-for-profits, there's for-profit, there's independent, there's larger organizations who run several, all of whom can work directly with the province in their emergency planning to identify deficiencies. I've heard, but I'm not familiar with HOPE, of some organizations who reach out to the municipality and work in partnership there, or with the local health authority and work in partnership there. But everything is a little bit unique, but the path always leads back to that preparedness piece, and it all starts with doing that assessment. And looking at what are the vulnerabilities, are there any gaps or deficiencies here, and what is our plan? And so organizations like that are responsible for having plans in the event of multiple kinds of emergencies. And so if there's a concern, those plans are, I don't believe there's any kind of plan that it wouldn't be public or publicly available, especially to the residents of that community. So it's always okay to ask. And if there's anything in the way, I'm not sure what information would be released to someone who's not part of that facility or organization, but it's always okay to ask.
Thanks so much for that. Let's move on to our next presentation. Kim McLennan from Fraser Health.
Hi there, I'm Kim McLennan. I'm part of the Healthy Built Environment program with Fraser Health. And basically we work with communities to help build healthier infrastructure and look more at the physical built. And after the heat domes last year, we decided to look back and see how we could kind of help communities build infrastructure, or what we could do differently to help with the excess death that we have. As you're probably aware, we had about 750 excess deaths during the heat dome of July, which is significant. And so we wanted to kind of look closely at where those deaths kind of came from. And I'll share my screen here just to give you some infographics a little bit. So as you can see, over the hottest days, we definitely had far more deaths than we expected. And then when we dove a little bit further, we found that the majority of the increased deaths were actually in individuals over the age of 50. But the surprising part was that there was a 177% increase of those in the community. So not in residential care or acute care. These are individuals that didn't have people looking after them, or were not connected with service providers. And so Fraser Health did look at where these individuals were that showed up at the emergency rooms with heat distress or kidney failure, where they were actually living. And as you can see in the lower diagram here, Chilliwack, it was pretty much focused in the north part of Chilliwack was where the majority of the individuals were coming from. It wasn't evenly distributed across the region. So we looked more at the neighborhoods and what these represent. And what we found was most of the individuals who visited the emergency rooms, the neighborhoods were had more economic and social vulnerability. And we don't know specifically if the individuals themselves had social or economic vulnerabilities, but the neighborhoods as a whole did. So from the built environment, we kind of looked a little bit further, and individuals in these areas also may have also had medications or illicit drug use that may have affected their ability to tolerate the heat. So what Fraser Health is doing is we're trying to work with pharmacies to provide care cards or notice cards for prescriptions and hand that out to be aware of what can happen if they take certain medications like diuretics, antihistamines, beta blockers, and such. But a lot of these individuals also live in what we call environmentally vulnerable neighborhoods. And these are neighborhoods that are sparsely vegetated. They have dark hued roofs, lack of cooling spaces. They don't have a lot of trees in the neighborhood. They don't have parks around them. And we call these urban heat islands. And so just to show you what an urban heat island is, this diagram here shows the daytime surface and air temperatures across different types of communities. And what you can see is in areas that have more vegetation, the temperatures at night cool off a lot quicker than they would in a downtown core, which is more cement and less trees. And that's because the heat is retained in the buildings and in the pavement, and at night it gets re-released. So individuals who live in these urban areas or live in buildings with no mechanical cooling, live on the higher floors or directly under a roof, have south-facing windows, single pane, or neighborhoods with low neighborhood greenness tend to live in areas that become more susceptible to heat illness and death, unfortunately. What we did find is that there are protective environments that can be put into place. So we can add ventilation and air conditioning to some of these buildings. We can also increase the trees and vegetation and water features around the building. Using green roofs or materials that reflect the heat for roofs, and also changing some of the surfaces in the pavement. So these are all long-term goals, but if we start to move towards them, then for future heat events, we might be able to reduce the effects long-term. Some other things that can be done a little bit quicker, like I already mentioned, is adding heat pumps or air conditioning units. You can add external window shading or window films that help reflect the light. And then just educating people to keep the windows closed during the day when it's hotter outside than inside, and then opening them at night to let the cool air in. And this was a problem last summer because we did have a smoke event as well. And so there was mixed messaging to keep the windows closed at all times, which didn't help. So we have to be very clear on the messaging that we use. Also, we can also increase the neighborhood greenness. Even adding plants to balconies and around buildings can also help mitigate some of the heat effects. As mentioned, there's different types of heat warnings. And what we found last year is that some of the messaging wasn't getting out to seniors. And I know that's been messaged a few times already today. And this is one thing that now with the new system, we're hoping we're going to get to some of the seniors. A lot of the seniors weren't getting the messaging because they weren't on social media. They didn't have cell phones. So we do need to make sure that we are reaching them via radio or TV. And some other things that we need to do is to make sure that they are able to get to cooling shelters. We found a lot of the cooling shelters last year were either too far for them to get to. They couldn't go because they didn't want to leave their pets at home. They didn't feel like they were the right fit for the shelter because of some other individuals that may have been at these locations. So we need to make sure that when we are talking to different providers of cooling shelters, or we're setting them up ourselves, that we are aware of the clients that we want to have. And we also need to encourage seniors and the vulnerable to cool off as long as possible in these cooling centers. So if you are operating a cooling center, that we do advise that they stay open as long as possible and even overnight to allow the body to actually cool down enough to sustain that cool temperature. And part of the problem is a lot of the individuals were ones not in care. So we need to develop a way to make check-ins with these individuals. A lot of the vulnerable populations are not able to assess the risk that they're in. So during a heat event, you have increased blood flow to allow the blood to transfer the heat to the surface. Well, that puts more pressure on the heart, which results in heart failure. Increased sweating leads to dehydration and then kidney failure. And then also we have just the overall increase in body temperature leads to cell death and organ failure. And these vulnerable individuals don't always know that they're in this state. And so they don't take the protective measures needed. And so a quick check-in or a phone, setting up a buddy system with individuals that live on their own or don't get out of their house on a regular basis is what we kind of need. Some of the other environmental interventions that we saw that worked was the presence of trees was the most effective environmental factor to prevent against deaths in BC during that 2021 heat dome. So encouraging planting of trees within communities, especially ones in older neighborhoods that may be more cement-based. Also, building around lakes or other bodies of water or putting in artificial bodies of water or spray features also help with cooling. I'm trying to keep it as quick as possible and as short as possible. So that's pretty much all I have. I'll put my information in the chat if you want more information on how we can provide information regarding how the built environment can help in emergencies. Thank you.
That was awesome, Kim. I really appreciate that. That's so interesting, especially about the tree piece. Such a doable thing. And it hits a bunch of check marks, you know, environmental, mental health, and also now built environments. It's amazing. Do you mind emailing your PowerPoint to me? And then we'll make sure that it goes up on our website connected to this event so people can, there's a lot of fabulous information there that people probably want to dig into.
Absolutely. I have other slides too that I'll just send you the whole thing so they can read it all.
That's awesome. Thank you so much. Does anyone have any questions before we move on to our last presentation?
I have a question for Chris, actually. If we could just give us an idea of how was it last year in terms of emergency calls. I'm pretty sure that due to COVID, the 911 system was overwhelmed already and stretched thin. So during that heat wave, have you noticed a tremendous increase in the phone calls? And how did you guys handle that extra increased pressure or demand?
Good question. So off the top of my head, we did certainly see an increase to our own fire department calls, like through 911, in particular to assist BC Emergency Health Services. I think our worst day, if I may share, I think we attended 7 cardiac arrests in one day with BCHS, and I do believe some of them were heat related. But overall, we didn't see too much of an increase in calls for our service. We do provide assistance to BC Ambulance. However, it's fairly lower than other municipalities to the west, just because we don't see much difference in patient and outcomes when we do. And we're set up a little bit differently than our partners to the west, but a little bit of an increase, but not substantial.
And sorry, and is your department in any way collaboratively working with a nonprofit agency in Chilliwack right now in emergency preparedness, like hands-on?
A few, mostly local government partners and First Nations in the community. And Lisa could probably speak more because she's more connected with groups than I am. I'm kind of just trying to hold it all up at a high level. But there are a few, Lisa, if you want to jump in.
All right. So we do work with the District Senior Resources Society. We've been doing that for a number of years. I've been presenting to them for a number of years, and that's where we have seniors there. And again, the gated communities, which are just residents wanting to have themselves ready for emergency preparedness. We've done some other presentations to other community organizations, but in the way of working directly with somebody, no, we do not have a partnership with anybody. No, we just go where we're asked to go, and we present. We're asked to present, and we educate as best we can for the clientele that are requesting our presence.
Patty?
So we experienced, we were on the ground and because of unaffordable housing, we work with a lot of persons that are low income and more seniors we are working with. An example of 2 months ago, we had over 80% of one of our houses was persons over 50, but just some stats in answer to the question. We were Chilliwack, so the week between July 25th and July 1st, we were the 6th highest township in BC reporting heat stroke events. And we had 52% of the deaths due to the heat dome in the Fraser Valley, 273 persons, 79% were 65 or over, and 51% were women. And in Chilliwack, of the 22 deaths, 15 were women. So that just gives you a snapshot of who was most impacted in the most serious ways. So I just thought I would share those stats as I've been working on a few committees for that.
Thank you so much, Patty. Any other questions before we move on? Okay. Natasha from the Chilliwack Division of Family Practice.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. I won't take too much of your time. I know I'm the last speaker, so I'm one of the project managers at the division. I'm overseeing the development of our division's emergency management plan. So our scope is primarily limited to family physicians and nurse practitioners. And so what we want to do is see how we can ensure that our family physicians are linked with any sort of emergency management initiatives that are happening in the area, and how are we able to link our physicians with coordination centers and whatnot so that we can ensure people are still receiving primary health care as they need it. When we talk about attached patients, we're going to be working with our physicians to see if they can start pulling lists of their frail elderly patients from their panels so that we can identify who those patients are, and then in the event of an emergency, coordinate with a nonprofit who would then be able to start reaching out to those frail and elderly just to see if they're doing okay, if there's any support they need. It's the unattached piece that we're still trying to figure out what that's going to look like, just in terms of how do we access those unattached patients. So our role will be to, sorry, I feel like there's a lot of talking behind me, I'm sorry, and a vacuum. So our role is really to coordinate the family physicians on our side and then link in with what's happening so that we can get the family physicians to where they need to go. And again, we're just at the beginning of our emergency management process. We're hoping to have our plan complete in preliminary form for sometime at the end of June, and then have the plan complete in September. And then we're also working with our physicians to be doing their own clinic level planning as well. So our plan is going to be looking at overall the primary care family physician landscape, and then having each of our clinics do their own planning as well. So that's what we're working on.
It's amazing. It's really great to hear. And it's just this other kind of first responder, first person that a lot of people connect with. So it's really, the physician piece is really, really important. It's really great to hear that discussions have begun there. Kelly, you have your hand up.
Yeah, just quickly with the list that you're hoping to compile through your physicians of vulnerable seniors, and then wanting someone to partner with to get the calls made out to them. I think that this is a great place for that to start. And we might be a great agency that we can work together with those phone trees to make sure that we're including.
Yeah, that would be amazing. And I know we've already shared our info, so it'd be good to sort of like, as we're embarking on that process, to figure out who we can partner with. And I'm happy you brought up phone tree, because we also see ourselves as a layer in the bigger picture. And so, and I see Petra has her hand up as well. So, the phone tree essentially on the healthcare side starts with Petra, and then we get the call, and then we start to sort of fan out to who we are working with, which is majorly our physicians and our nurse practitioners. We're also looking at what we can do in terms of a power failure so that before an emergency happens, people know like here are the places where we will gather, so that we can have those communicated beforehand and our physicians know, so that if they don't have the ability to use their phone or communication device, then we've already sent that information out prior to the emergency happening.
Leslie, go ahead. Layla, sorry.
Sorry. So great to hear, Natasha, and I love the planning that's gonna start happening. My question for you is, at the moment, do you guys have a mail out list that the physician will send their patient regarding the educational piece about heat wave, not necessarily the preparedness part of it, but who to contact, or do you do any of that at the moment?
Well, I think what we would like to be able to do is disseminate information to the practices so that they can have it, in their waiting areas and whatnot. I think it's a lot to ask of the physicians and their MOAs to be able to reach out and do mail outs. They're already so busy with patient care and their own administrative work. But if we're able to be able to give them resources that they can have in their waiting room, then I think that's something that we can do, and then provide the physicians with any additional information that we have. And then perhaps during a visit, they can share that if they have a senior that they identify as someone who would need that information. So I'm hoping that's also a part of our plan, so that we would connect with all of our partners, see what resources you have, and see if we can get that onto one page, something that's easy so the physician has it. And then if they, see that patient in their practice and they're seeing them for anything else, and they're able to say, hey, just in case, we might be expecting another heat dome or hopefully not a flood, but here's some information if something does happen. So having the physicians be able to identify who those patients are during the visit, and also by looking at their own panel.
I know when you say an attached patient, you're talking about patients who do not have a primary physician. Yes. But when we say an attached patient in the community, we're referring to a client who are not attached to a nonprofit organization, okay. Somebody to check on them. So, that's just one piece that I wanted to add is the social prescribing program. I'm just gonna put that in and I'll put my information there. The goal of the program is essentially making sure that clients, seniors in the community, providing that they have a social worker or a physician or a nurse practitioner that would make a referral, and we connect them to somebody. Like if they're connected to Kelly, or they connected to the Compassionate Neighborhood or to Chilliwack Community Services, somebody will bound to check on these people. So that's the attachment piece that we talk about in the community. So maybe advertising the program of social prescribing and getting that word out and having physicians know about it will be part of the solution, I hope.
Yeah, and I'm hoping we have about half an hour slated at our September all members meeting to provide some of that information and resources, and ideally it'll be an in-person meeting. So I'm sure I'll be trying to get the mailing list from this meeting from Sabine and connecting with all of you so that we can ensure we have those resources at our disposal, and for the physicians as well.
Awesome, thank you. Deidre, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to really go back to the vulnerability checklist for seniors, and I think it's a responsibility for all of us, all of our organizations who are touching seniors in some way, shape, or form, because some are known, some are not, as Natasha had identified, as Anne had identified. We know a portion of seniors, but not all. But all of us have perhaps a way of touching and connecting with individuals. Even the grocery store, the banks, is there an opportunity to actually use such a form and saying, have you used this form? Have you filled this out? I appreciate what Lisa was saying about the home emergency plan, fill in the blanks, you know what I mean? That's really, those two documents, those two items, I think from a physician's perspective, and they have their meeting with their patient, from any other areas that we are connecting with our senior population, is to ask the question and ensuring that information is completed. I think that would be a great start. I think in terms of the communication as to how to disseminate information and creating awareness about upcoming heat heat waves and checking in to say, you know, these are the areas that you can get more resources or support. You know, the TV was one thing mentioned, and I was part of an isolated seniors working group in Richmond actually for many years ago, and we identified the Knowledge Network as one TV channel that we heard many seniors are using. So is there, and many of the isolated seniors, so is there an opportunity to actually, you know, have sort of a banner going through of information that is, you know, on a periodic basis shared, just like we have TV screens that are, you know, sharing information, you know, on a regular basis. Just something to think about as to how we can disseminate information that to reach into these individuals that are not necessarily connected with us.
Actually, Petra, that reminds me, and I'm going to tell this to everyone because I have a terrible memory, so hopefully someone will remember when I say this, but in my other world, I do some on-air hosting with Zoomer Media, and they have national channels, so Vision TV, Joy TV, so I can always connect with them to see if we can get some information sent out that way as well. So I'm telling you all so that if I forget, you'll remember.
We also have a local TV station, right? It's called Chill TV.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah, that's another one that you might want to, it's on a national level, it's a local level. So maybe that's something that we should be telling seniors, because if they do have a TV on, maybe that's a local TV station and they're always looking for content.
Yeah, and I'm sure they would be more than willing to give it out. Yeah, thank you.
So I'm just a little confused about the list. Are we making that vulnerability list? Is it already, does it exist? And how can we access that? Or are we supposed to come up with it and collaboratively make a list?
So with what we would do with our family physicians, and we're still figuring out timing, is having them go through their panel and come up with a list of frail patients. And then we would, in the event of an emergency, then pass that list over to our partner nonprofit. That's something we wouldn't probably pass on before an emergency because there's obviously privacy concerns, but it would be more sort of once in a, like having that panel analysis happening before, but then in the event of the emergency, working with our partner nonprofit so that we can start reaching out to those patients.
I think there's two different lists that we're talking about, a list of people, right?
Yes,
and
yes.
And the vulnerability checklist that that Chris referred to. And I don't know that one, I think what we want to think about is not having everyone create their own like list. It makes a lot of sense to find out, you know, what kind of already exists. Is there a draft? Is there an older version? Can we come together, create the list, and then everyone takes that information out and collects it from their clients? And I feel an emergency response table kind of brewing potentially coming out of this. So I would say stay tuned for further information on maybe creating a vulnerability checklist for seniors in our community. Does that sound about right? I see Lisa kind of.
Yeah, that would be great.
Okay, Patty?
Yeah, so I just wanted to kind of wrap up for myself a couple things. So during that week I talked about, we had over 1,000 persons that we helped in the community. We were run off our feet, and I'm hearing what everyone's doing that's kind of spread out. And I mean, you know, we could be hit with a freshet and heat wave very quickly here. It could happen very quickly. And I think we really need to come up with a community mobilization and engagement plan, which is the people that are on this meeting is probably the people. And I'm willing, I have a summer student starting next week. I am willing, and one is really a great researcher, to have that summer student work through and contact everyone if you're willing, and kind of maybe pull together a meeting. And I mean, we have, I have 75 staff. I have 2 houses, and on shift, we can actually do, we did phone trees and calling, and we have 24-hour calling. So even when we have, and I mean, I think everyone knows, and I heard somebody say we don't want to react, we want to respond, we want to be prepared. So, but, and there's so many things, and so, you know, and the thing is, and we talked about, you know, others coming and helping. This is about neighborhoods, like community block watch. I live out in the Chilliwack River Valley, the ratepayers, the neighborhoods, Post Creek. This is, you know, when the flooding happened, the neighbors came and saved Barrowtown Pump. The government can't get there quickly. It just, this is how it works, and it's boots on the ground, and it's the organizations and the nonprofits that are able to move quickly and be agile. So until the government can get there. And I mean, it's just the, you know, government is not quick moving that, you know, they're not down the road. Like, so I think, you know, we have really great resources and expertise. I mean, and we have a lot of vulnerable persons in the community. Seniors are a big sector. What happens as well is when we found when we have these events, people that are used to accessing help, that, you know, they kind of know where to go for help, but we have a whole range of others that, you know, aren't used to getting help, and they are lost. They don't even know where to start. And I know a lot of seniors that are like to be autonomous. They're really not connected, but then when these kinds of things happen, they are lost. So how do we connect with them? And I think we have the expertise, and we have enough know-how to come together and have a community engagement and mobilization plan. And I'm willing to provide one of my students with a, you know, something that she can kind of get her teeth into and have a really good project, as well as 2 other projects I have. So willing to do that. I just don't want us to leave here and not have some kind of together plan, because I'm just really concerned that this could happen again very quickly. And we've talked about it, and we're almost there, but we're not there. And so that's what I'd like to see, is us to go away with maybe another date for people that are interested to come together. And how do we connect quickly and at least start on some of this? So that's what I'd really like to see come out of this meeting. And I'm just so impressed by everybody's input and what they bring. And I'm so glad I kind of invited myself to this table today. Thank you.
That's awesome. Thank you, Patty. I do think there's going to be some follow-up here. You will all be contacted one way, shape, or form. I'm not sure exactly how, but like a table that kind of addresses some of the suggestions and ideas and thoughts, to me, makes the most sense. But we will definitely reach out with, you know, how that's going to manifest soon. So rest assured. And Charlene, go ahead. Question.
My last question is, seniors respond to the printed word. If they don't go online, if they don't do Facebook, blah, 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 TV, they'd have to have a pen and paper in front of them. My thought is a mail out to the entire community, because it's something that affects everybody when there are disasters. Does anybody know if because it's expensive to do a mail out, but like our community, 6,000 homes, let's just say, is there any program that anybody is aware of that would pay for that? Like we're looking at, I think it's a cost of maybe 97 cents each or something. I don't know. I mean, that's $6,000. We would want to be able to prepare beforehand and not be concerned with the cost of doing something like that. So you would send out the vulnerability program, are you prepared, or whatever, some attention getting thing, and they could do their assessment, and then we could tell them where to go with that, who they can contact. So does anybody have an answer for me, or a suggestion, or I don't know?
Oh, I know one of the things that we did, it's not exactly the same situation, but when we were setting up for vaccination centers and stuff, and Jones would remember this pretty well, as would Petra, we ended up developing a plan and then planning the Chilliwack progress, because we thought that there were quite a few.
I understand that.
Read it.
I understand that, Charlie, but again, not everybody gets the newspaper. So you know, the people here, maybe 2,000 people get the newspaper, and seniors do get the newspaper. It's, you know, it's old school. But I just, you know, I mean, does anybody have an idea of how I would contact the post office to see if there's any way that they'll do it as a community service, or where would I start?
I'm just seeing in the chat box. I don't know, Emily mailouts, is that like, it's a great idea.
Oh, that's a great suggestion.
I'm not sure. I mean, these are things that I think there's a number of really, really solid ideas coming out here, and like immediate ideas. And I think like we are out of time. But I think that we've recorded this meeting. We've got one heck of a lot of information in the chat box. I think we're just gonna edit that chat box up nicely and share it with all of you for all the contact information and all the ideas. And I think there's a lot to dig into if a working table were to be formed and flesh out some of these ideas and kind of share the workload of all these different ideas that have come up. So that it's kind of the structure of CHC to like catalyze that kind of stuff. I'm happy to be a part of that. We need to have a little bit more conversation about what that exactly looks like, but that's logged also, the written word and how to get that into, we have done getting things into everyone's mailbox before. Oftentimes you're not sure how many people are going to open it and read it and use it, right? So so that's something to be discussed, definitely. Are there any final closing comments, questions before we end our day?
I just want to thank everybody for all the wealth of ideas that this sharing experience. I've been making notes and now I have to transcribe them and see if I can read my handwriting. So thank you, everybody.
Thank you for that, Charlene. Awesome. Just before we all sign off, we have a little feedback poll that Annette's going to share with you. If you have a second or two to just give us your feedback, that's useful for us. And stay tuned for more information from us coming out of today.
And the poll has been launched, Sabine.
Thank you, Annette.